Picture this. You wake up in the year 2035. The room is warm, the light is soft, and your hands look suspiciously younger. The tiny marks of time you went to bed with have vanished, like they packed their bags overnight. Your skin has quietly returned to its 25-year-old version, while your brain is still trying to understand why you spent 10 minutes yesterday searching for keys already in your hand. The doctors around you hold that strange expression people use when they know they've done something extraordinary, but would rather not trigger a government alert. Pride, fear, and a small dose of please don't collapse, all mixed together. Your biological age hasn't slowed down, it has reversed. Your body pressed the undo command without asking for confirmation. And all this comes from a therapy developed inside a place where every machine costs more than an apartment in downtown Paris, and where even the microscopes probably have better health insurance than you. Welcome to Altos Labs, the fortress built to push time backward. Jeff Bezos, Yuri Milner, and a few other titans looked at death and decided it was negotiable. To them, mortality is not destiny, it's a software malfunction. And when they see a malfunction, they do what they always do. They fund a team of geniuses and tell them to fix reality. Inside those walls, nothing feels normal. Fridges hum like they guard classified secrets. Monitors glow with patterns that look suspiciously like the future. Scientists walk around with the careful confidence of people who know something that could make the rest of us faint. They describe reprogramming human cells the way we talk about updating apps. A small reset, a touch of molecular editing. And suddenly, your tissues behave like they rediscovered caffeine and optimism on the same day. Some call it rejuvenation. Some call it madness. The people paying for it simply call it Tuesday. The promise feels impossible. Erase the marks of aging like over-enthusiastic photo filters. Reboot organs like hardware. Rewrite DNA like a rough draft. If it works, turning 60 may feel less like a countdown and more like early access to your next version. Everything began with one radical idea. Aging is not fate. It is not punishment. It is not a cosmic joke written into your cells. It is a process. And processes can be edited. That idea lit the fire. That idea built Altos. That idea is why billionaires now treat years of life as assets. But one question still hangs in the air. Who was the first person bold enough to say aging could be reversed, cancelled, undone like an embarrassing email sent at 3 in the morning? We're about to find out. Before we open that door, do the smart thing. Hit subscribe. It won't make you immortal, but it will add a couple extra minutes of mental youth to your day. And tell us in the comments which wild stories you want next. The strange ones, the forbidden ones, the ones that feel like a flashlight pointed into a secret tunnel. Now let's meet the person who first dared to challenge the clock. To understand how we got here, we need to return to the moment everything changed. It starts with a quiet scientist named Shinya Yamanaka, sitting in his lab, pressing what is essentially a biological reset button. He takes adult cells, fully grown and convinced of their age, and turns them back into baby versions of themselves. The kind of reversal that makes even the microscopes wonder if they need new glasses. The scientific world freezes for a second. Then Silicon Valley hears about it, chokes on its coffee, and decides the party has officially begun. To them, this discovery is not a curiosity. It is an invitation, a promise, a cheat code. Suddenly, billionaires begin showing up in research centers with checkbooks so bright they could double as emergency lighting. The idea spreads faster than a meme. Aging is not destiny. Aging is a variable. a number you can move up or down if you're brave enough to press the right buttons. Altos Labs emerges from that frenzy, and its early recruitment phase looks less like science and more like an espionage thriller. Scientists receive calls in the middle of the night offering salaries that make their current contracts look like pocket money. Some say yes before even hearing the job description. Others say yes before finishing the sentence. Inside the company, they're given something almost mythical in modern research: total freedom. No grant hunting, no committee approvals, no "please wait 6 months for administrative validation." At Altos, it means something simple: do anything that works, and everything that might work. If the biology refuses to cooperate, convince it. If the cells complain, reset them. The atmosphere becomes electrifying. Researchers talk in whispers about possibilities no one dared explore before. Organs rejuvenated, tissues reset, cells forgetting their age like someone unplugged their memory. Some scientists describe the mood as optimistic chaos, which is the scientific way of saying everyone is excited and terrified at the same time. But dreams and theories can only go so far. Sooner or later, someone has to test the ideas. Someone has to move from dazzling equations to living matter, from elegant hypotheses to messy, unpredictable biology. The theory is beautiful. What comes next is not always as pretty, because now it is time for the experiments, and that's where the real trouble begins. Now the curtain rises on the experiments. This is where the theories stop being polite and start getting real. Old mice begin turning young in a matter of days, as if someone secretly swapped them for newer models. Wrinkled skin smooths out. Organs repair themselves like they just received a mandatory software update. Cells behave as if they woke up from a long nap and decided they had never lived a single stressful second. The results become so stunning that one researcher admits he checked the labels on the cages 3 times before announcing anything. Another tells the story of blind mice regaining their sight, blinking at the world with the confused disgust of someone who just realized their cage hygiene is not exactly premium. Some rejuvenated mice sprint around with so much enthusiasm that the scientists start feeling personally attacked. When a rodent born before your last tax declaration suddenly outruns you, the universe is sending you a message. But the victories don't arrive alone. The complications follow closely, like uninvited guests at a lab meeting. Some cells regress too far, losing their identity and turning into chaotic biological blends with more enthusiasm than structure. The body becomes a battlefield between youth restored and youth overdone. So the team pushes forward, then pulls back. They break things, fix things, break them again, and pretend it was all part of the plan. Progress looks less like a straight line and more like a dance between genius and panic. The results leak into boardrooms, where billionaires sit with the patience of toddlers waiting for dessert. They nod politely at the safety warnings, the ethical questions, the long-term risks. Then they ask the only question they care about. When do we try this on humans? It is the kind of question that freezes a room, because the science might be ready to dream. But the world is not always ready to follow. And some countries are very comfortable skipping the word regulation altogether. Which leads us to the next twist. A dangerous one. A question that pushes the entire field onto thin ice. What happens when someone finally says yes? Pressure begins to rise inside the fortress. It is subtle at first, like a whisper behind a closed door. But soon it spreads through every floor, every hallway, every conference room where white coats sit with their coffee and their conscience. The world has started paying attention, and Altos Labs can feel it. Governments watch from a distance. Some lean forward with fascination, as if witnessing the birth of a new era. Others take notes with the quiet desperation of people who suddenly realize the future might depend on what happens in someone else's lab. And a few governments stare at the developments the way a landlord stares at a tenant installing suspicious plumbing. Interested, nervous, and already preparing a very long email. Inside Altos, the mood shifts. The early excitement, the scientific euphoria, the midnight breakthroughs, all of it now carries a shadow. Scientists debate in hushed tones. They whisper in elevators. They sweat more during meetings, which is always a sign that the research has crossed from promising to we might accidentally change the human story forever. Because the deeper they go, the clearer it becomes that technology capable of erasing wrinkles can also erase principles older than medicine itself. Reversing age is not a skincare routine. It is rewriting biology. It is deciding who gets youth, who keeps age, and who holds the key to the clock. Rumors begin circulating with the stamina of Olympic athletes. Quiet suggestions that early human tests might be happening far from American soil, in countries where ethical guidelines is a phrase mostly used in crossword puzzles. Places where regulations are more recommendations than rules. Places where a politely worded sign that says "do not touch" is treated as modern art. And that is when the shift happens. The fight is no longer scientific. It becomes political. Because whoever cracks rejuvenation first controls the century. This is the new nuclear race, except this time the weapon does not explode. It regenerates. It does not kill. It decides who gets to live longer, work longer, rule longer. Time becomes the new territory, and every nation wants a piece of it. Diplomats start circling the idea like sharks circling something shiny. Committees form. Secret alliances emerge. Some countries quietly fund competing programs, hoping to reverse their population's age before their economy runs out of breath. Others wonder what happens if their rivals get there first. What happens when your neighbor can produce leaders who stay 50 forever? Meanwhile, the scientists at Altos feel the world closing in. They sense the shift in tone. Meetings become heavier, as if someone added gravity to the room. The questions from the top grow sharper. Fewer jokes, more urgency. And then, inevitably, the billionaires step forward. They ask for updates, timelines, projections, optimistic estimates, pessimistic estimates, and the kind of hypothetical scenarios that never stay hypothetical for long. They nod through explanations about risk and safety, but you can see it in their eyes. They want results, and they want them before anyone else. And soon they begin asking the question no one wants to hear out loud, the one that pulls the air out of the room, the question that turns ethical debates into survival strategies. What comes after reversing age? Not just turning 60 into 40, not just restoring organs, something bigger, something stranger, something that makes becoming young again look like a warm-up exercise. They want more, much more, and what they ask next is even more vertiginous than youth restored. It is the question that pushes the entire planet into a new kind of suspense. A question that could redefine what it means to be human, and we are not ready for the answer. Now the future stretches out in front of us, smooth and shiny, like someone just rolled a fresh red carpet across time itself. Every scenario feels possible, and none of them feel safe. First comes the optimistic version. Scientists refined partial rejuvenation therapies by the early 2030s, and suddenly people start regaining 10 or 20 years of biological age as casually as getting a routine checkup. Hospitals evolve into maintenance centers, more like luxury garages for humans than places of illness. Birthday parties become a polite formality. You turn 60, blow out your candles, and everyone claps because you look 40 and your joints are already planning their next marathon. But that is the dream version. The real world rarely enjoys being that generous. The realistic timeline is much less gentle. A small elite gains access to the breakthroughs first, filling private clinics with whispered promises and platinum membership cards. Humanity begins to split into two categories: those who can renew themselves and those who cannot. The renewables and the perishables. Youth becomes a privilege instead of a stage of life. Time becomes a product with terms and conditions, the kind you definitely should read, but almost certainly never will. Then comes the uncomfortable scenario. Not dystopian, just disturbing enough to feel possible. Some people age like normal humans because they have no choice. Others reverse their age because they can afford to. Two populations share the same streets but not the same biological timeline. The world discovers that the deepest fracture isn't economic or political, it is temporal. The wealthy don't just get ahead, they literally step backward while the rest move forward. And right behind these scenarios comes the absurdly credible one. The world where rejuvenation becomes a subscription service. Monthly payments to stay biologically young, premium plans for extra repairs, a loyalty program for your telomeres. The nightmare where your age depends on whether your credit card goes through. We laugh at the idea now, but so did the people who once laughed at paying monthly for TV, water filters and cloud storage. The future always starts as a joke. Then someone monetizes it. But all these possibilities lead to one question. The question that hovers over the entire story like a shadow we cannot step out of. If age can be erased, if youth can be restored, if time becomes editable, what exactly is left to define a human life? That is the cliff where the future waits for us. A place where we must choose what it means to grow, to change, to exist at all. And after everything we have seen, the next question is even stranger. What happens to meaning when nothing ends? We end this journey with a softer voice, the kind that arrives when the noise fades and the truth finally shows its face. Humanity has always tried to cheat the clock. We carve monuments so massive they could defy sandstorms. We brewed elixirs in candlelit rooms, convinced that the right combination of herbs and hope could bend mortality. We prayed to gods, followed legends, chased fountains, swallowed powders, injected serums. Every century had its trick. Every culture had its cure. Altos Labs is simply the newest chapter of the same story. A story written by frightened, brilliant, stubborn creatures who look at time the way sailors looked at storms, with awe, with panic, with a tiny spark of rebellion. But now the rebellion feels real. For the first time, the clock is not untouchable. The scythe is not inevitable. The idea that aging is optional has moved from myth to experiment, from fantasy to spreadsheets, from bedtime stories to peer-reviewed data. And that changes everything. So we ask the questions we avoided earlier. What becomes of a life that stretches too far? What becomes of choice when there is always more time to choose? What becomes of urgency when nothing ends unless we decide it should? There is a strange danger in a life without deadlines. If time no longer chases us, do we still move? Do we still dream? Do we still love with the same intensity when nothing can be lost? Some philosophers say meaning is carved from scarcity, that we love deeply because moments are fragile, that we act bravely because opportunities vanish, that we grow because we know the story cannot last forever. Take away the ending, and the middle begins to float. Imagine a world where people live to 150, maybe 200, maybe more. Careers stretch into centuries. Relationships last through eras. Families become timelines so long they look like geological layers. And somewhere in that vast horizon, we might lose the tension that makes a human life feel like a fire instead of a loop. Or maybe we discover something new. Maybe longevity gives us room to explore depths we never touched before. Maybe longer lives create deeper compassion, greater patience, a wider sense of purpose. Maybe a humanity with more time finally learns not just how to live, but how to live well. Both possibilities stand in front of us. Both feel equally true and equally terrifying. Which brings us to the real question. Maybe what we chase is not eternity. Maybe we are running from the fear of losing it. Maybe immortality is less about refusing to die and more about refusing to accept that everything beautiful eventually ends. So now the choice lands in your hands. If the treatment existed tomorrow, would you take it? Would you wind the clock backward and reclaim your younger self? Or would becoming young again steal something only time can carve? The quiet strength you gained, the perspective you earned, the depth that came from surviving everything that tried to break you. Tell us what you think in the comments. We read everything, even the chaotic ones typed at 3 in the morning. And we will see you very soon for another dive into the brilliant, strange, and deliciously dangerous world of crazy science stories.